Hey, truthers. I know I said I was going to talk to you guys later on, but I was driving and I saw something that was different. I saw some men and some women that are standing on the corner here in Bossier around Airline, and they have different posts that are not posts but billboards that's talking about circumcision. So I have Harry, and could you please tell us, number one, Harry, well, tell us your first and last name.
Yeah, I'm Harry Giermund. I'm the press spokesman for Bloodstained Men and Their Friends. We're a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to informing people about the harm of infant circumcision. It's a really quite a harmful thing and shouldn't be done to children.
Okay, so can you tell me, please, like, when you guys started this organization, and also tell me what prompted you all to start this organization?
Right. So many of us have been aware for a long time that we personally were injured by having part of our penises cut off, which is what circumcision is.
Okay.
And we were very clear that this was something that violated our right to our own body, which is the most fundamental human right there is. And so in 2012, the American Academy of Pediatrics produced a policy statement which was very misleading and made it sound like circumcision was a good thing. Even though they said they didn't recommend circumcision, the quote that was most used by the press was that the benefits outweigh the risks. But they also said in the same paper...
Sorry about the noise.
in the same policy paper, they also said that they didn't know what the risks are. So it was logically inconsistent from the beginning. If you don't know what the risks are, you can't say that the benefits outweigh the risks. But further, they treated the foreskin as if it were a body part that had no value, that had no functions. And the foreskin does have functions which are well known in the medical literature. Most of the sexual sensitivity that a man has is in his foreskin. So if you cut that off, you've deprived him for life from most of his capacity to feel sexual pleasure, which is a monstrous thing to do to anyone.
Hold on just 1 second. I'm sorry. So you're saying that by being circumcised, that has a lasting effect on a man's ability to enjoy sex. Interesting. So what about the aspect of transferring diseases or germs?
Right. So circumcision was first introduced into America as what at that time they believed that masturbation was harmful, and so it was introduced to prevent boys from masturbating and to punish boys for masturbating. Dr. Kellogg, who introduced it, who was a quack, wanted to cause as much pain as possible to boys for masturbating, and so to punish them, and so they wouldn't do it anymore because they believed it was harmful. And also for girls caught masturbating, he recommended pouring carbolic acid on the girl's clitoris. We know today that these things are monstrous and shouldn't be done. In the rest of the world, they've never done this to their boys, or if they did do it, they've already stopped. So the English-speaking world had this masturbation hysteria, but they all dropped it. The UK dropped it, Australia dropped it, New Zealand dropped it, Canada is well on the way to dropping it completely. But America keeps pushing circumcision when we know that it's harmful and it has no legitimate basis to mutilate a baby boy. There's no legitimate basis for that, just as there's no legitimate basis to do female genital mutilation. They're both harmful. They're both done to people who are unable to fight back. Why do they target people, children and babies? Because they can't fight back. They can't express their wishes verbally. They can't say the word no. If they were able to say the word no, they would say it. They say no the only way they can, which is by screaming and struggling against their restraints to be free. It's a monstrous, extremely painful, traumatic event. And just babies need to be loved and nourished and cuddled and loved and know that they're in a secure, loving home and that their parents care for them, they don't need to be traumatized, especially not in the genital region where it's a tremendous shock to the most sensitive part of their bodies.
Interesting. So I have 3 sons, and I was raised in a Christian home, in a very Christian environment, and I'm sure probably many people in this group have as well. So biblically, I was always taught the importance of being circumcised. And I know that sometimes as women in private conversations, we do have conversations about penises that are circumcised and those that are not circumcised.
Right. Let me just talk about Christianity to begin with. When Christians started out
I want to put this right here because
Yeah.
I think it's gotten a little quieter.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you guys.
So-
It's impromptu here.
Christians originally were a Jewish sect. The original Christians were all Jews. Christ and the apostles were all Jews, and Jews circumcised. But when Christianity grew to be an independent religion, St. Paul said circumcision is not required for Christians. It was of no benefit to a Christian. So it's no longer part of the religion once Christianity split from Judaism. And American Christians are often surprised to learn this, but in the rest of the Christian world, they're taught that circumcision has nothing to do with their religion. It's not part of their religion. And so all of the popes were intact, except for the first one, because he was Peter, who was one of the apostles, and of course he started out as a Jew. But all the other popes were intact. The current pope is intact. In the Lutheran world, in Europe, they're all intact. In the Presbyterian world, in the Protestant world, they're all intact in Europe. It's only in America where Christians somehow believe, have been failed, somehow the Christian leadership in America has failed to inform them and point them to the right passages in the Bible that said, for Christians, this is of no value. Christ was the last blood sacrifice. It benefits you nothing, and it's an insult to Christ to do another blood sacrifice after Christ died for your sins. That's Christianity. Some of our members are Christians, others are non-believers or of other faiths, but somehow American Christians have been misled to believe that mutilating their boy is part of their religion, and it has not been from the beginning of Christianity. Once Christianity became independent of Judaism, circumcision was out.
So I know I asked this question earlier, and I apologize. I just want to know, if you are engaged in intercourse with a man who has not been circumcised, are you making your body as a woman more susceptible to diseases or infections?
The answer is no. And we like to say intact instead of not circumcised because the normal state is to be intact. But
intact.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Intact.
But,
I'm being educated, so I apologize. I'm not trying to offend you, okay?
So people have their own reasons for promoting circumcision, and it's been promoted falsely. It's a $1 billion industry. People make a lot of money from this. And they have a conflict of interest when they're giving parents advice that, you should do this for some reason. Well, yeah, but they're benefiting from it, and they have a conflict of interest, which should be pointed out. They're giving bad advice and profiting from their own bad advice. In Europe, where the men are intact, they have better sexual health than here in America, where the men are cut. If circumcision were beneficial, the reverse would be true. Europeans would have worse health, and we would have better health. That's not true. In Australia, they used to circumcise all the boys. About 40 years ago, they stopped, and the circumcision advocates said, you'll have health problems, blah, blah, blah. Well, after they stopped, their health improved. It got better. So the idea that circumcision is good for you or prevents disease is simply has no basis. And there's been once circumcision was introduced in the 19th century, there was whatever disease people were most worried about at the time, somebody would claim that circumcision prevented it. So they said it prevented syphilis and gonorrhea, which we know is not true. They said it prevented HPV. Human papillomavirus, not true. They said it prevent. Now the latest one was HIV. They also said cancer prevents. No, it doesn't. The latest one was HIV. And in order to make this claim, there was some very unethical research done to poor people in Africa who were in areas where there was a high incidence of where the AIDS epidemic was just out of control. The researchers had a bias for circumcision before they started. They had no history of promoting HIV prevention, and they did have a history of promoting circumcision. So they had a bias to begin with. The studies were not scientific, and in addition to being unethical, they were not scientific because they gave the people who were circumcised, the men who were circumcised, they gave them condoms and training on how to use them, and they didn't do that to the control group, the not cut group. Right. And then they said, oh, well, circumcision prevents HIV. Well, yeah, because they were wearing condoms, which actually works. And if you look at their numbers, the actual numbers, they said it was less than 2% benefit, the actual benefit. But then they presented it by presenting a relative difference. They said that these tiny numbers actually were inflated to 60% reduction, which is just nonsense. We don't see that in the real world. In America, when most of the men were cut, circumcision ravaged America. At the same time, in Europe, when most of the men, in America, when most of the men were cut, before they had any kind of antiretroviral therapy to control HIV infection, many thousands of circumcised American men died of AIDS very quickly. In Europe, at the same time, HIV had arrived, but it didn't spread to the degree it did in America, and they were intact, and we were cut. So the claim that it prevents HIV is not based on the real world. In addition, we now have something called pre-exposure prophylaxis for people who are at high risk of HIV infection. So if you're HIV negative and your partner is HIV positive, you can take this medication called Truvada, and it prevents the HIV from being transferred from the positive partner to the negative partner, and that's 98% effective. So that can be done without any surgery, and it's very effective. Circumcision involves amputation of a healthy body part, and even if you believe their numbers, which, as I said, are not really scientific, the best they can claim is an actual benefit is 2%. So 98% effective if you use Truvada, possibly 2% effective if you use circumcision. In addition, in Africa, there was another study done. This was a female to male, so they didn't make a claim of protecting females. They made a claim of protecting HIV negative males with a HIV positive female partner, that circumcision would somehow help. So this was their claim. At the same time, they did a study the other way: HIV positive male partners, HIV negative female partners. They found that circumcision increased the transmission rate from males to females. So the claim that you're going to be protected if your partner is cut was not supported by the research in Africa that's been used to support circumcision. So when they came up with this initial study or initial finding that circumcision was increasing HIV transmission from males to females, they stopped the study and said they stopped it due to futility. That was their word, futility. If they were really there to prevent HIV, that would not be futile to discover that this circumcision increases transmission. So they gave away the game. If they said it's futile, that means their purpose there was to promote circumcision, which is what all of us suspected from the beginning.
Right.
So they were biased and unscientific and unethical, and yet this substandard, terrible research has been used to promote circumcision in America, which was used in the AAP recommendation, which said benefits outweigh the risks, which they've since let expire. It's no longer enforced, but they're still promoting circumcision. And then once that was done, the CDC used that AAP position to make it official policy for the CDC to promote genital mutilation of boys. So since circumcision is a violent attack on a child, on a healthy child who needs no surgery, the CDC, your government, your CDC, your tax money is used to promote, to incite violence against children. This is where we are today. It's an outrage. That's why we protest. What's happening to American boys is outrageous, and American men, because that boy will grow to be a man. He's going to have to go through life with a damaged penis. We hear stories, just that on a successful circumcision, the damage is bad, but we hear stories all the time of men, young men who can't get it up because their penis has been so badly damaged. We hear stories.
Sorry
we hear
about
stories of men who have painful erections because so much skin was taken away that it's too tight that it can't accommodate the larger size when erect. And they have to go through life with sex ruined for them. Just ruined. That's a terrible injustice. And one thing we've learned is that when you explain injustice, people who are sensitized to injustice, who know injustice firsthand, get it. They say any kind of injustice, we're not on board with it. So
True.
That's why we have to make it clear that this is a moral problem. Mutilating children is a moral problem, whether it's a boy or girl.
So I guess I didn't realize that this impacted. I didn't realize that this impacted men's ability to have a normal, healthy sex life.
Right.
I wasn't aware of that.
So if you believe in God, then you believe God made things for a reason. There's no extra body parts. There's no throwaway body parts. It's there for a reason. It has most of the sexual sensitivity, and it provides more skin for the erection to grow into, and it provides a sort of a sliding and gliding action, which reduces friction and so when your partner is intact, you don't need as much lubrication for pleasant sex.
Okay. So I have another question. So the founder, I realize you're not the founder,
right.
Correct? But clearly you're one of the spokesmen.
Right.
Are you all medical doctors?
No, I'm not, but I've studied this for years.
So what prompted you, in just like 15 seconds, what prompted you there?
Yeah, when I was 16, I realized that there was a scar on my penis. And I'd heard about circumcision. I couldn't believe anybody would do that to me. I saw this scar, and I thought, oh my God, they did that. They really did that to me. And I was shocked and upset because I would never have allowed anyone to cut off part of my penis. Why would anybody want that? I didn't want it. And I knew that this was a tremendous injustice, and it outraged me. And I was furious at my parents for allowing that to happen. And so I knew at age 16 that it was wrong, and as soon as I could connect when the internet came along and we could connect to other people, I met people that understood the issue the way I did, and we got together, and we've been doing activism for many years, and we found that this bloodstained costume, where we wear a white outfit with a bloodstained crotch. I don't know if you want to show that or not, but you're welcome to if you want to. But it gets people's attention.
It does.
And
it does.
The only way to start a conversation is to grab their attention. And
I agree.
Make
the
them
shock
ask
effect.
a question.
Yes, the shock effect.
And we're not here to upset people, but we need to get their attention.
Okay. All right. So I have this little card right here, and I'm going to photograph the card, and I'm going to place it in the group. And just a little quick information about the group. About their organization. I'm going to place it in a group, and I know quite a few of you guys probably watching the game, but I think it's definitely something that we should have a conversation about. We should. Like I said, for myself, I was always taught from a religious standpoint the reason why I should have had my sons, and I did have my sons circumcised. But I'm definitely very curious, as I always have been in life, about some of the choices and decisions that I've made. Is it because it was the right thing to do, or if it was something that I did because out of tradition? And I think that as you get older and you travel and you broaden your horizon and expand your perception, that you start doing a little research on things. So I'm not here to advocate circumcision or intact or not intact. I'm not trying to promote that. What I am promoting is knowledge.
Thank you so much for letting me speak.
No problem. And thank you for talking to me.
It's really been a pleasure.
And whenever you step out of the car, I'm going to take a picture of you.
Okay.
So I can have the picture of your front.
Okay. We'll do that.
All right. Thank you. Okay.